You were not supposed to hear this today. Not yet. Not this way. But something has shifted in the unseen, and the silence that has surrounded your heart is no longer protecting a secret, it is preparing a revelation. Someone who believed they had more time has suddenly realized they don't. Someone who convinced themselves they could keep pretending has reached the point where pretending feels impossible. Right now, while you are wondering whether your feelings were ever noticed, a heart connected to yours has discovered the truth you tried so hard to hide. And the moment that truth reached them, every plan they had for today began to fall apart for a reason they still cannot fully explain. You have spent so much time believing your emotions were invisible. You smiled when you wanted to cry. You stayed quiet when every part of you wanted to speak. You convinced yourself that silence was safer than rejection, that distance was easier than disappointment. But what if your silence was never truly silent? What if every glance, every pause, every moment you almost said something carried a message that reached them long before your words ever could? That possibility is becoming impossible to ignore, and the signs around them are becoming too powerful to dismiss. At first, they thought it was coincidence. They brushed off the strange feeling that kept interrupting their thoughts. They blamed exhaustion. They blamed stress. They blamed memories that refused to stay in the past. But the feeling did not leave. Instead, it became louder. Every ordinary moment carried an extraordinary weight. A familiar song played at exactly the wrong, or perhaps the perfect, time. A place they hadn't visited in years suddenly appeared in conversation. Your name surfaced where it should never have been mentioned. None of it made sense, yet all of it pointed in the same direction. Meanwhile, you continued living as if nothing had changed. You carried on with your routine, never realizing that somewhere else, someone was staring at the ceiling long after midnight because your presence refused to leave their mind. They replayed conversations they once dismissed as ordinary. They remembered the way your eyes softened during moments no one else noticed. They questioned every goodbye, every silence, every missed opportunity. The memories that once felt complete suddenly seemed unfinished, as though an invisible page had been missing all along. There is something remarkable about truth. It waits patiently until the exact moment it can no longer remain hidden. It does not force itself into the story before the heart is ready. Instead, it arrives quietly, almost gently, until suddenly it becomes impossible to ignore. That is exactly what is happening now. Your soulmate has reached a moment where the pieces no longer fit the old story they kept telling themselves. Every explanation they once believed is beginning to collapse beneath the weight of a deeper realization. The strange part is that they never expected the realization to bring peace. Instead, it brought urgency. Their heartbeat changed. Their priorities shifted. The schedule they carefully planned for today suddenly felt meaningless. Meetings became distractions. Conversations became background noise. Even the goals they had been chasing for months seemed strangely empty compared to the single thought now consuming every quiet moment. That thought has your name written across it, even if they have not spoken it aloud. They keep asking themselves the same impossible question. What if you have been waiting all this time? What if every delay has cost more than they ever imagined? What if the opportunity they believed would always be there is slipping away while they remain frozen between fear and hope? These questions are following them everywhere, refusing to give them peace, refusing to let them settle back into the comfortable life they had carefully constructed. You may not see it yet, but the spiritual connection between two souls often awakens before either person understands what is happening. Logic searches for answers while the heart already knows them. That is why they feel restless without explanation. That is why ordinary places suddenly remind them of extraordinary moments with you. That is why every attempt to distract themselves somehow leads them back to the same destination. The universe has stopped allowing detours. Even more surprising is the confession they have not spoken to anyone. Deep inside, they are beginning to admit something they fought against for far too long. They are no longer afraid of loving you. They are afraid of losing the chance to tell you. Those are two completely different fears, and the second one has become stronger with every passing hour. It is changing the decisions they make in ways even they cannot fully understand. You remember the moments that seemed insignificant. A shared laugh. An unfinished sentence. The silence after a conversation ended. You wondered whether those moments mattered to anyone except you. But what if those were the exact memories replaying in their heart right now? What if the smallest details became the strongest evidence that what existed between you was always more real than either of you admitted? That possibility is becoming harder for them to deny. Destiny has a fascinating way of waiting until both hearts have experienced enough growth to recognize what was standing in front of them all along. Had this happened earlier, one of you might have walked away. One of you might have chosen fear instead of faith. One of you might have mistaken timing for rejection. But something inside both of you has changed. The lessons that once felt painful are beginning to reveal the purpose they always carried. Still, one final obstacle remains, and it is larger than either of you expected. Your soulmate is facing a choice they never thought they would have to make. Stay where everything feels predictable, or risk everything for a truth they can no longer escape. Safety whispers that they should wait. Love whispers that waiting has already lasted too long. Every hour that passes makes the whisper louder, until it begins to sound less like a feeling and more like a calling they cannot silence. At the same time, you are being prepared without even realizing it. The disappointments you survived were not punishments. They were shaping your heart to recognize something genuine when it finally arrived. Every unanswered prayer taught patience. Every closed door taught discernment. Every lonely night quietly expanded your capacity to receive the love that was still making its way toward you. But even now, you cannot imagine how close that journey has become. There are signs you may have overlooked. The dreams that felt unusually vivid. The moments when someone unexpectedly reminded you of them. The unexplainable peace that arrived for only a few seconds before disappearing again. None of these experiences were random. They were gentle reminders that unseen movements often begin long before visible changes appear. Something has already started, even if you cannot yet point to it with certainty. The person connected to your soul has reached the point where excuses no longer sound convincing. They have run out of reasons to delay. Every argument they used against following their heart has slowly fallen apart. The walls they built for protection have become prisons they desperately want to escape. For the first time in a long time, they are allowing themselves to imagine what life would look like if fear stopped making every important decision. Yet one unexpected event changes everything. Just as they prepare to move forward, they discover something they were never supposed to learn. A single conversation. A single message. A single unexpected moment reveals what your heart has been carrying in silence all along. They finally understand that your feelings were real. They were not imagined. They were not temporary. They were not wishful thinking. In that instant, the world they carefully organized loses its balance. They freeze. Every future plan suddenly feels irrelevant. Appointments are forgotten. Deadlines lose importance. Conversations end halfway through because their mind has already gone somewhere else. The realization hits with overwhelming force. If your feelings have been real this entire time, then every day they spent hiding from the truth was a day they could have been walking toward you instead. That realization brings both joy and regret in equal measure, creating an emotional storm unlike anything they have experienced before. What happens next surprises even them. Instead of sitting still, they stand up. Instead of waiting for another sign, they decide they have already received enough. Instead of asking whether they should reach out, they begin asking how quickly they can. Something inside them has awakened. And once a soul truly awakens, it becomes almost impossible to return to sleep. The invisible connection that once felt distant now feels immediate, urgent, alive. You may still be wondering why everything has felt so emotionally intense lately. Why your heart refuses to completely let go. Why hope continues returning after every attempt to bury it. The answer may be simpler than you think. Sometimes your soul recognizes movement long before your eyes can see it. Sometimes your spirit senses someone coming closer while your mind still believes they are far away. And sometimes the greatest miracle begins with a decision made in complete silence. Right now, somewhere you cannot see, someone is looking at the clock with a completely different perspective than they had only hours ago. Time suddenly feels precious. Distance suddenly feels unacceptable. Tomorrow suddenly feels too late. Every excuse that once sounded reasonable has become meaningless because one truth now outweighs all the others. They know your heart. They know your feelings. And knowing has changed everything, but there is one final detail they still haven't told anyone. The destination they are rushing toward is not simply a place. It is not just a conversation. It is not only a confession. it is the moment they believe could change both of your lives forever, and just as they take the first irreversible step toward you, someone unexpected appears in their path. If you'd like, I can also expand this into a 6,000-word YouTube script with an even slower, more cinematic pace and stronger cliffhangers throughout. The interruption feels almost unreal, as if time itself has decided to test the strength of the choice they have finally made. The person standing before them has no idea what is happening inside their heart. They smile. They speak. They ask ordinary questions. Yet every second feels like an eternity because their mind is no longer in that conversation. Their spirit has already begun moving toward you, and nothing around them feels important anymore. Still, the unexpected encounter delays them just long enough for doubt to whisper one final question. Are they already too late? For a brief moment, fear returns. It reminds them of every reason they stayed silent before. It tells them that you may have changed your mind. It insists that too much time has passed. It paints pictures of opportunities lost forever. But then another voice, quieter yet stronger, begins to rise beneath the fear. It reminds them of something they cannot ignore. Hearts connected by destiny are not measured by calendars. They are measured by courage. And courage has finally awakened inside them. At that exact moment, without knowing why, you stop whatever you are doing. A strange stillness settles over you. It lasts only a few seconds, but it feels different from anything you have experienced before. The world around you continues moving, yet your heart pauses as though it has heard something your ears cannot. You cannot explain it. You cannot prove it. But deep inside, you feel as though someone has just made a life-changing decision involving you. You shake the feeling away, you tell yourself it is only your imagination, you remind yourself that hope has disappointed you before. You refuse to build expectations from emotions alone, yet the feeling refuses to disappear. Instead, it settles quietly into the deepest part of your heart, waiting patiently for the moment when everything will finally make sense. Meanwhile, your soulmate is replaying every memory they have with you, but this time they are seeing those memories through completely different eyes. They remember the conversations that once seemed ordinary. Now they hear hidden meaning in every word. They remember moments when you became unusually quiet. Now they realize silence was speaking louder than language ever could. They remember the times your eyes lingered just a little longer than expected. Now they understand those seconds carried emotions they were too afraid to acknowledge. Regret has a strange way of arriving. It does not shout. It quietly sits beside the truth and asks one heartbreaking question: what if I had understood sooner? That question echoes through every corner of their mind. What if they had called? What if they had stayed a little longer? What if they had stopped pretending they felt nothing? Each possibility creates another wave of emotion, yet instead of trapping them in guilt, it pushes them forward with even greater determination. The past cannot be rewritten. But the future is still waiting to be claimed. Outside, the sky begins to change. Clouds drift across the horizon. a gentle breeze moves through the air. To anyone else, it is just another day. But for two souls connected beyond explanation, the world seems to be quietly reflecting an invisible transformation. Sometimes nature becomes the first witness to miracles before people even recognize them. Sometimes heaven whispers through ordinary moments, leaving signs that only the heart can truly understand. You begin noticing little things. The same numbers appear again, a familiar melody plays unexpectedly, someone speaks a phrase you needed to hear, you smile for reasons you cannot explain. None of these moments are dramatic on their own, yet together they create a feeling that something extraordinary is approaching. Your logical mind searches for answers, but your soul already knows the direction of the story. At the same time, your soulmate reaches for something they have avoided countless times before, their phone. It rests silently in their hand. One simple message, one simple call, one simple step, yet somehow it feels larger than every decision they have made in years. Their fingers hesitate above the screen. Their heartbeat grows louder. Every possible outcome flashes through their imagination: acceptance, silence, forgiveness, distance, hope, fear, love. Everything exists together in one breathtaking moment where the future hangs on a single choice. Then something unexpected happens. Before they can press a single button, the screen lights up. It is not your message. It is not your call. It is news they never expected to receive. Someone close to them speaks your name, not casually, not accidentally, with urgency. The conversation that follows changes everything they believed they knew. They discover pieces of your journey that remained hidden from them. They learn about the battles you fought without asking for sympathy. They realize the strength it took for you to keep moving while carrying emotions no one else could see. Suddenly, admiration grows even deeper than affection. Love is no longer built only on feelings. It is built on respect. For the first time, they understand that your silence was never weakness, it was courage. You protected your heart while still wishing them well. You chose kindness even when confusion would have been easier. You continued becoming the person you were meant to be, even without knowing whether they would ever return. That realization humbles them. It changes the way they see you forever. You, however, remain completely unaware. You continue believing today is just another ordinary day. You complete familiar tasks. You answer familiar conversations. You move through familiar places. Yet beneath the surface, your spirit feels strangely lighter, as though an invisible burden has begun lifting itself without your permission. You cannot explain why breathing feels easier. You cannot explain why hope quietly returns after months of silence. You only know something feels different. The universe often works this way. First it changes hearts, then it changes circumstances. Only after both are prepared does it reveal the meeting that was quietly unfolding all along. That is why nothing has happened publicly yet. The greatest transformations are still taking place where no one else can see them. Invisible foundations are being strengthened before visible miracles appear. What feels like waiting is often preparation disguised as delay. Your soulmate takes one deep breath. They stop overthinking. They stop imagining worst-case scenarios. they stop negotiating with fear. Instead, they listen to the unmistakable pull inside their soul. It says only 3 words: go find them. Those words carry a peace they have never experienced before. Not excitement, not panic, not confusion. Peace. The kind of peace that only arrives when someone finally stops running from their destiny. Without another excuse, they gather everything they need. The plans they had made for the day are abandoned. The schedule that once seemed important is forgotten. People around them notice the sudden change. Where are you going? Someone asks. They pause. A smile appears that they cannot hide. I have something important to do, they reply. But even those words fail to describe what is really happening, because they are not simply going somewhere. They are moving toward the life they almost lost by waiting too long. And just as they begin the journey, far away, you look out of a window for no reason at all. A feeling washes over you so suddenly that it steals your breath. Your heart begins racing, not with fear, not with anxiety, but with recognition, as though someone unseen has just stepped across an invisible line that has separated your souls for far too long. You whisper to yourself, something is about to happen. You don't know why you said it. You don't know who you are expecting. But somewhere in the deepest part of your spirit, you already know, because at that exact moment, your soulmate is no longer wondering whether they should come to you. They are already on their way, and neither of you realizes that before this day is over. A single unexpected revelation will force both of you to confront a truth that neither heart is fully prepared to hear. The journey begins quietly. There are no dramatic announcements. No one around them understands why their entire energy has changed in a single morning. To everyone else, it looks like they are simply leaving for another destination. But inside, it feels as though they are walking toward the moment their soul has been preparing for long before either of you realized your stories were connected. Every step forward feels lighter than the last, yet every heartbeat carries a question they cannot escape. What if this changes everything? For the first time in a very long while, that question no longer frightens them. It gives them hope. Hope that your silence was never rejection. Hope that your patience was never wasted. Hope that love, when it is real, survives the distance that fear creates. And with every passing mile, that hope grows stronger instead of weaker. Meanwhile, you wake up with an unusual feeling you cannot explain. Nothing around you looks different. The same room,